Howdy folks, it is your Princess Chaotic Ayana here, and welcome to spooky season! It is my favourite time of the year. I've been watching horror movies all month. No costume, you may have noticed. Unfortunately, since Kevin Smith lost all the weight, there just isn't a great thing for someone who's 300 plus pounds to dress up as anymore. I do own the Mario Odyssey tunneling parasitic brainworm hat. I'll wear that next week, but I want to see some comments demanding it if that's what you want to see, okay? And I mean on the YouTube video. Let's see them. Anyway. Halloween has become tricky to me of late, as has spooky season generally, largely because of the presence in my life of my 6-year-old Lathander. He's very much of the age where he is affected by the stuff that's designed to mess with you psychologically, the music, the atmosphere, that kind of thing, but he's not old enough to have developed any kind of defense mechanism against it, and he doesn't really have that love of being scared yet, but he very much wants to join in. So to help out maybe some less gaming-aware parents there, we are going to take a look at my top 5 Halloween games for kids. Couple of caveats up front. This list isn't in any order when it comes to the quality of the actual games themselves. It's more about how suitable they are for the kids generally. Also, I mentioned Lathander was 6. A couple of these games are designed for older kids, but I will mention when that's the case. On with the list. And the first in my list of Halloween games for kids, Medieval on the PS4. A remake of the classic PlayStation 1 game, Medieval tends to tread the line between scary and funny just perfectly for that younger audience. The game contains a lot of very dry, British-style humour based around the main character. He's a knight who's famous for being a hero of legend that actually died at the start of a battle and is now being raised from the dead to earn his stripes. But the game also has a lot of Halloween-style trappings as well. I mean, you're playing as a skeleton, the first level's a graveyard, you're fighting zombies, goblins, the usual crowd. It's pretty much perfect in that regard. I will say there are a few moments later on, around the middle of the game, that might prove a little bit too scary for some very young kids. There's a level in town where the villagers are possessed, for example. But overall, the game is a great pick for Halloween. Time of writing is only €14 too. Do make sure you get the PS4 2019 remake though. If the characters look like they're made of Lego, you've got the original. It was a great game at the time, but the remake is the exact same game with updated visuals, so you'll want that one. Number 2. Goosebumps the game on the Switch. So the great thing about this recommendation is, by nature of what the game is, most of this work has basically been done for me and I can take a paragraph off. When it comes to the judgment of if your kids should play it, actually I suppose it's possible some of you may not have heard of Goosebumps. It's a massive series of children's horror books, and an extremely meta but not terrible movie starring Jack Black. Anyway, if your kids have read the books, they are not going to find anything spookier than that in the game. As for what the game is, it's an old school puzzle-solving point-and-click style adventure game. You play a boy or a girl wandering around town, collecting various objects, basically anything that's not nailed down, and using them to solve various puzzles. A number of the puzzles are actually based on plot elements and different puzzles from the books, so if your kids read some, they should actually get a leg up on that, which will be really cool for them. Speaking of reading though, there is quite a lot here, as it's the game's main method of communication. The puzzles are also guilty of that moon logic thing that I'm sure we all remember from our childhood with this sort of game. Fortunately, these days the internet has all manner of guides that can help them out if they get stuck, or you can not tell them that and just let them suffer like we all had to. It depends on your mood, really. So I will say, having just watched the TV series myself for a bit of a laugh, some of the Goosebumps stories are actually pretty scary, so yeah, you might want to look at them first if your kid hasn't experienced them at all. Honestly, you can pick up the books for like €3 on Amazon, or even free as audiobooks if you have an Audible account. They are super short, and give them a listen. If your kid would be okay with it, the game's fine. Future Ayana, recommend one to us. Oh, you're right, that is a good pick. Thank you, Princess. Also, do note, I am talking about Goosebumps the game. There are a couple of others on the Switch that I haven't played, so I can't give you a recommendation on them. But Goosebumps the game, definitely a winner. Number 3 is Diablo 3, available on multiple platforms. So it's getting a little bit on in years now, but Diablo 3 is... Okay, you know what? I did know this one was coming. Let me explain, okay? So yeah, I know Diablo 3 isn't especially scary or horrific to you and me. But I'll tell you this much, when I was 10 or 11 years old, if I'd been sat in a room with the lights off like I wasn't supposed to be playing it, there's a pretty good chance I'd probably have been scared at some points. Some of the cutscenes especially are pretty terrifying. It's also got all of the trappings that I'd associate with the spooky part of the year. Again, skeletons, demons, spiders, the works. Some parts of the game are geared towards being scary more than others as well. Notably the first and fifth acts, they're extremely dark and atmospheric. That along with some sexualized content definitely puts this one in the older kids bracket in my opinion. The game isn't really based around trying to be scary, it's in fact more about empowerment. So if you have a kid that just wants something Halloween themed but isn't really trying to get a case of the Ghiblies, this is a really good direction to go. Plus, being able to blast the terrifying thing on your screen with a disintegration laser is actually a pretty good way of conquering one's fears. The game's out on pretty much every platform as well, so there are no issues there. It usually clocks in around €20, except on the Switch, where it is sadly insanely expensive because, And number 4, Plants vs. Zombies on multiple platforms. Okay, I'm cheating a little bit here. I'm actually going to recommend pretty much the whole Plants vs. Zombies franchise. As a series, it's pretty light on the scares, but it very much gets in on that spooky fun. And it's pretty comical too, honestly. The original cell phone game is actually available on PC and is a classic puzzler, but if you want something that's going to keep the kids entertained for a while, I would recommend Plants vs. Zombies Battle for Neighborville. It's a team-based shooter that's based on the series. It's got all the characters being put together in 3D, and like Medieval, it just walks that line between comedy and spooks for younger kids really, really well. I have a particular unexplainable love for this zombie missing his shoe. It's absolutely adorable. A couple of caveats, sadly, on this recommendation though. The game does have a single-player mode, but it's geared towards being multiplayer online. And obviously the game has no control over the content of voice chats or anything like that, so parental discretion is advised. The entire franchise is also littered with microtransactions, and that needs to be something you've either discussed with your kid or you're going to need to watch them wherever they're playing. It's a shame too, because otherwise this is such an ideal pick. You can get it for about €40 currently on PS4. And finally, the fifth game I'd recommend for Halloween for kids is Luigis Mansion 3 on the Switch. So yeah, I know this might be an obvious pick, but honestly, what could be better for Halloween than Luigi roaming around a haunted mansion looking for his kidnapped brother and the princess? Actually, the game does know what could be better, which is him having an adorable ghost puppy backing him up. This is a great game for all ages. My 6-year-old could understand what he was supposed to be doing perfectly. He found the spooky atmosphere just the right level for him, and he enjoyed getting to catch the ghost in the vacuum and explore the haunted hotel. And honestly, I did as well. It was so much fun. So for anyone not in the know, obviously this title is the third game in a series. You do not need to have played the first two in order to enjoy this though. It stands perfectly fine on its own. It's entirely single player, and it doesn't have any of that microtransaction stuff going on that I was talking about previously. So you can just let your kids play this one. I mentioned Lathander could understand what he was supposed to be doing. He could, but there was a lot of reading required up front, which he can't quite do yet, so I had to help out with that, especially the introduction to the game does have a lot in it. After that it calms down a little. Also, despite the game being a year old, Nintendo don't lower their prices like other developers do, so you are still looking at paying €60 for this one. That said, it is absolutely worth it because the game's fantastic. So there you have it folks, those are 5 games your kids can play around Halloween. It really is a minefield out there trying to find what's suitable for them sometimes. Especially around Halloween time, there are some games out there that look like they're going to be suitable that absolutely aren't. That is what we are going to take a look at next week. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please let me know if you found it helpful in the comments. I will see you all next week. Peace. I'm out.